Greetings, you are listening to The Heartful Technologist. I am CK Hicks, and I want you to think back to a time when you interacted with a system that you thought was going to behave a specific way. You maybe even filed paperwork to happen a specific way. And then because of either a lack of or an over-influence of a human intervention, it didn't go that way. And I'm going to cite a recent example that I'm going to highly sanitize because I think it's germane to this and is informative for us who are technologists either by trade or by consumption. You know, we are using systems and devices that we expect to work a specific way. We're creating a contract with software, with hardware, with other humans who are creating these tools. And when that is betrayed or broken, it feels wrong. It feels weird. And in some cases, it can even cause larger problems when it bumps into other things. And again, I'm going to highly sanitize all of this, but the short version is I recently conducted business on behalf of an organization with a financial institution. And I went in to make a routine change to a routine process to change a very small parameter in a very well-established pattern of events. And this is something that I have done before, something that unfortunately I have had problems with before. And this time was the same. I went in, filed a piece of paper that said I wanted this one parameter to change, nothing else, leave everything else the same. And then lo and behold, the process continues forward, but there's this actually kind of huge side effect that takes place to where something that hadn't been working suddenly didn't. And, you know, there was a breakdown in a separate kind of connected process. And it was all because I went in and wanted to change a very small parameter from one to another. And what had to happen, as I have now spent a day or two or whatever trying to figure this out and talking and phone calls and all this stuff, what happened is there was a process that took place and a procedure for changing that process that I saw as the customer. And the people that I was working with in the, we'll just call it front of the house part of the business, they had processes and so forth that they went through to help me make this change. And as that change took place and needed to be codified into a rule or something that was going on outside of us, it moved to another department. And that department, we'll call it the back of the house, they took the things that we were doing and interpreted them based on what was not just written on the paper, but also on the initiative or the purview of the people working in that department. And the person working in the back office department, back of the house, they made a change based on what they interpreted that request, my request, to be. And that then had a ripple effect because that was not communicated to the front of the house nor to the customer. And all of a sudden, this other thing over here broke, and I was left kind of going, what happened? What went wrong? Why did this change? And so then, you know, we go through and we sort it all out, and departments are calling each other and all this stuff. And again, this is not the first time this has happened, unfortunately, with this specific organization, but it is something that I feel like kind of extra, angsty about, because what happened here was not actually a breakdown in the process that I was shown, nor was it a breakdown even in people doing the jobs that they had been requested to do. It was a breakdown in communication and in the process of making a change that was beyond the scope of what you had been asked to do, right? I went in and said, change this to this. And they also then took initiative and said, oh, well, that means we should also do this thing. And That was very much not what I had requested, and I would not have requested, and was even, I guess maybe to reveal a little more, I was already aware that there was going to be a change or a sort of a patch in place, and I was performing that behind the scenes on my own elsewhere. And I know this is highly obfuscated, and hopefully this isn't too out there for people to follow along, because you've probably done stuff like this. You've probably interacted with systems that went a different way, and you call somebody and they send it to the wrong thing or whatever. But here's what I'm trying to highlight here. The goals of software, of hardware, of people who write code for all these things, and the front of the house, the back of the house, all the different people that work in all of the different connected departments that sustain these systems for us to use, right? For humans. All of these are written, and all of this is being done so that humans can work together, so that humans can do business with one another. We can interact with storage and processing capabilities, and ultimately just have a greater confidence that the things that we want to do in life could happen. That's why we do this. That's why we write code. That's why we build things. It's for humans. And when a system falls over, either because of too much human intervention, which in this case was the problem, someone acted on their own volition because they saw something and said, oh, well, they probably also want this. Or on the flip side, when we think about the wave of AI services that we are, just absolutely fire hosing our own data into to be processed and churned around and then come out looking completely different, and we're like, what happened? In those cases, it's too little human intervention. So the amount of the percent of human in the loop is extremely important. And it's important for us going forward, and it's important for what we're doing right now. And these could be well-established financial, institutional processes, like the one that I'm talking about. And in this case, it was a human who made a judgment call instead of, informing the other departments and obviously the customer that something needed to change or was going to change that they didn't request. Or it's a human out of the loop where maybe you're taking, if you're building any of these kinds of systems and you're taking information or you're taking intellectual property or whatever it might be, and you're pushing it through a pipeline of services that you don't control, well, then things are going to happen in that as well that might be less desirable because you're not in the loop enough. And anyone who's built any technology system is going to know what I'm talking about, and it will probably have already had 10 examples of their own that they can think of in this same vein. But I think it's important for all of us to always go back to this idea of these systems are built for humans, and what we are doing is for other people. And if we lose sight of that, then whether it be us wanting to take a little extra initiative because we see something and we think, oh, that probably also means this, or we are not taking enough of our own initiative or not in the loop enough, and we're just kind of abrogating responsibility to a machine or a process that we don't control, then ultimately what we need to do is always keep other humans in mind as we are interacting with these, and keep other humans in mind as we're interacting with these systems and processes and so forth as customers, as users, as people who are consuming and using the technology, because other people are also involved in this. If you're not building it and you're the one using it, there are other people who are responsible for building this, and they also need the courtesy, but also the professional responsibility, to be upheld. That we would all treat each other in a way where we're trying to further our ability to do things together, and we're trying to give one another the confidence to build, to grow, to trade, to whatever it might be, to create. And those are very human things. But when we are either out of the loop or taking actions that aren't documented and communicated, then things happen. And that's how we get to these moments when we end up running in circles and researching, why did this take place, and after action reports and all these kinds of things. And we could just throw our hands up and say, never mind, I'm going back to, we're going to trade like gold coins and we're going to do everything in person and, all that. But that's not the point. The point is we want to lean into these technologies and we want them to work for us. And that means a human in the loop and an informed, informed process or informed procedure by us as users, to where we know enough of what's going on to where we can check and understand why things happen the way they do. But we also need to be able to trust, especially whether it be a financial institution or a medical institution or whatever, that they have procedures and processes and so forth for just these types of situations. Because, and the encouraging part, I think, 99% of the time, these things work just like we would expect. And we don't ever have a reason to question these systems. But when we want to do something and we realize we hit a wall, or we go to make a change, and we realize that there was a bunch more taking place behind the scenes that we're grateful for, but that we don't truly understand or control, and it doesn't work in the way that we thought. And, that's where I think we get into this kind of quagmire, and we have to be really careful. We have to think about the other humans in the process, and then think about how we can make those processes better, those systems better, so that we can better serve one another. So again, having to white label and sanitize everything on this one may have been a little harder, so thanks for sticking with me. If you have any situations like this that you think are funny or insightful or anything, I could use the comic relief and or the insights to say, hey, think about this when you go in and interact with other systems in this way. So if you ever want to email those to me, it's podcasts@ckhicks.com. I would love to hear them. And until then, I will say thank you for your time and your attention, and I'll talk to you soon.